With Genra's death behind her and the remains of Doatek in her sights, Ayane, along with the resolved new leader of the Mugen Tenshin, Hayate, begin their assault at the very seat of Doatek's tower, the Tri-Tower. But before they could leave the village, Kasumi pleads for Hayate to forget about Doatek and start a new life in the village. Ayane intervenes, reminding Kasumi of the code she broke, allowing Hayate to proceed with his mission, and fights Kasumi to an unknown outcome. Ayane, Hayate, Kasumi, and even Ryu Hayabusa all arrive at the Tri-Tower, with Hayate and Ayane making it to the upper levels with ease. Incidentally, the fourth Dead or Alive tournament was also taking place. Ayane briefly meets with Hayabusa, wondering how she got separated from Hayate.
なぜお前がここにいる？
竜様。
颯はどうした？
それが。
はぐれたか。他の皆も。
And on cue, Christy made her entrance, ready to stop the ninjas at all costs.
これからが見物だという時、場を荒らすな忍者ども。
ドアテックは今日で終わりよ。お前も払い箱ってことね。
抜かせ。二人まとめて始末してやる。
一人で十分。
Ayane decides to take on Christy herself, allowing Hayabusa a chance to find Hayate, which, as we know, doesn't happen. Hayabusa meets up with Kasumi instead. It should be noted that in the original DOA 4, Ayane had the chance to either fight Christy or find Hayate, while Hayabusa fought Christy. But in the retcon storyline of Dead or Alive Dimensions, Ayane fighting Christy is considered canon.
After defeating Christy, Ayane ascends the stairway of the tower only to find Hitomi running down the stairway in tears after talking to Hayate. The two ninjas are then attacked by Doatek military, giving them chase to an intersecting bridge near the top floor.
Eternally won't look back.
Desperate for their survival, Ayane knew exactly what she had to do to turn the tide. Unleash the power of the Hajin Shinza.
This winding road was made long ago. Things I must do.
誰役所。
With the soldiers destroyed and the floor decimated, Hayate and Ayane quickly ejected the tower, conveniently landing at the heliport below. As if they couldn't catch a break, Alpha 152 escaped the Tri-Tower and set its sights on the two ninjas, as Kasumi failed to stop the superpowered Jello monster. With Ayane and Hayate barely able to fight off Alpha 152 with their lives, the Tri-Tower suddenly found itself collapsing into flames as Helena activated the self-destruct sequence to put an end to Victor Donovan's ambition, and herself as well, with the two sisters Ayane and Kasumi watching as the flames seemingly engulf Lena as she ends her life, thus ending the events of Dead or Alive 4 from Ayane's perspective.
2 years have passed since the fall of the Tri-Tower, and since that time, Doatek had slowly resurfaced, with a surviving Helena Douglas restoring the image of the company. However, during the past 2 years, Kasumi has been in pursuit of Alpha 152, and Ayane was still pursuing Kasumi on 2 occasions, one incident in New York, and the second in Antarctica, where Bayman got in the way. However, like Ayane, he too was suspicious of Kasumi's actions. Prior to the 5th Dead or Alive tournament, which none of the ninjas were competing in, Ayane's pursuit of Kasumi would have her cross paths with Hitomi in the jungles of South America, who she reluctantly spars with.
何よそんなところから。あやねさん？じゃあアインじゃなくて隼人も一緒。じゃあないんですね。私大会に出るんです。あやねさんも修行ですか？違うわよ。そんな格好で何が修行よ。
And later in China, she would find Elliot, and much to her chagrin, the drunken kung fu student Brad Wong. Just as the latter makes an unwanted advance toward Ayane, Elliot displays his improved skills in a swift and amusing way.
Show you a good time, baby.
Nice block. You've been improving.
Sure have. Actually, I'm entering the tournament. Hey, are you gonna be there too?
We'll see.
In true Ayane fashion, she hides her flattered expression for a brief moment and approves Elliot's request to train with him for the 5th DOA tournament, which is yet another sign of Ayane slowly but surely coming to terms with the unconditional kindness of strangers, something she has never been used to outside of 2 people she has known in her village.
So I hear you guys aren't fighting in a tournament, huh?
I hope you didn't bring us all the way here to talk about that.
Huh? No, man. Are you kidding me? No, of course not. It's actually, well, Ellen has been talking about this thing called Mist.
Mist?
Yeah, that's right. I said Mist. So, actually, I don't know anything about it.
Oh, jeez. If you're that clueless, just shut up.
After the 5th DOA tournament, Ayane, alongside Hayate and Hayabusa, are informed by Helena of suspicious activity at an oceanic oil rig, the very same one Bass Armstrong was working at prior to the tournament.
As you can see, Doatech maintains independent resource production facilities all over the globe. At one of them in particular, there have been some strange comings and goings. Donovan's pet assassin, Chrissy, Miyako, head of Doatech Japan, and Lisa Hamilton. She was the one who used you as a guinea pig for Project Epsilon.
Lisa is also in contact with Mist.
She is. We suspect that she knows everything about Mist. And the location of Alpha 152. Which is why I told Kasumi where she was in the first place.
And Kasumi went to that facility?
Yes, that's right. There's something hidden there, I know it. I can't appear to do anything unusual, but I've made arrangements to slip you in under the radar.
The 3 ninjas infiltrate the oil rig only to find Kasumi coming out of the secret lab after defeating Alpha 152, and Ayane and Hayate immediately kill her.
Nisa, watashi...
As they suspected, the Kasumi they just killed was a clone. As they proceeded further into the lab, Hayate would encounter the mysterious rig, only to be trapped in stasis by an automated sequence. The real Kasumi would soon follow to save Hayate, but to no avail. Lisa Hamilton arrives almost conveniently to override the code, freed Hayate, and give the 4 ninjas the opportunity to destroy Phase 4, ending the events of Dead or Alive 5 from Ayane's perspective.
Picking right up where the events of DOA 5 left off, Hayate visits Helena to get more information on Mist, only to recognize Rig in an image shown on Helena's laptop.
Wait, who's this?
And that's Rig. He was a supervisor at the plant. Did you run into him?
No, but I would like to know where he is now.
He would later travel to New York to get revenge on Rig, who insists he has no clue who he is. Bass breaks up the fight, causing Hayate to rethink his strategy in exposing Rig, if not outright kill him. Ayane appears on cue, awaiting orders from Hayate, who tells her that they'll keep an eye on Bass and Rig. But for now, they had to keep an even closer eye on Marie Rose, as Helena secretly sent them to watch over her as well, and for good reason. Honoka possessed a power similar to a dangerous foe that brought great misfortune to their village for years, and for that reason Ayane was especially cautious, following them even as far as the DWA Stadium, and even an abandoned island run by dinosaurs. Because video game logic, that's why.
Ayane would finally cross paths with Marie and Honoka at Kasumi's former hiding place, the Miyabi, to test their theory about Honoka, only to have Marie say this in response.
Marie Sensor! I smell danger!
If this wasn't telling that DOA 6's story is playing out like a dry sitcom at this point, I don't know what is. No, seriously, you can add laugh tracks in this whole cutscene and it still works!
Marie Sensor! I smell danger! Let's see what we can do. How cool! Is it like this? Wait, Honoka!
But getting back to the story, Honoka was so impressed with Ayane's string of moves that Marie luckily managed to block that she wanted to try it herself. Well, this goes to show you that the style of Mugen Tenshin Hajimon can't be so easily imitated. Not even by this talented airhead. And even if it didn't sink in, Ayane made sure she was gonna learn today. Honoka's humiliation was doubled upon her defeat at the hands of Ayane, but Marie believed she went too far by going all out on her, so she asked her to leave. Judging by Honoka's fighting skills, Ayane concluded that somehow, someway, Honoka was indeed related to her late evil father, Raidu.
There's no mistake.
Later that evening, out of nowhere, Ayane would come face to face with a strange woman with big ass wings. Okay, that joke's getting old. The strange woman was Neo Tengu, and she berated her for assuming her identity from 2 years ago, even though she was clearly under a spell by Genra, while also hitting on her? Anyway, floodgates for Yuri fanfiction aside, Ayane fends off the flirty Tengu, and the two begin fighting. Surprisingly, Ayane had lost the fight, which left her even more confused. Wanting answers, she finally asked Neo Tengu who she was, only to get the most anticlimactic answer ever!
Well, I am the true Neo Tengu of Miyama.
Bruh. After Lisa decides to help the Mugen Tenshin locate the Mist headquarters with the data she stole from the lab in the previous game, Hayate and Ayane both decide to kill two birds with one stone and deal with Honoka and Rig during the DOA tournament, believing the former would be a liability and the latter a threat. At the tournament's locale, the DOA Coliseum, Marie Rose and Honoka are wandering through the museum anticipating their next match. Ayane stops in their tracks, demanding Honoka to come with her. As expected, Marie defends her friend, and the two come to blows.
You'll be coming with me. Who do you think you are? You are not getting Honoka!
During the pointless rumble, Christy sneaks Honoka away to the helicopter, giving Mist the upper hand on the Mugen Tenshin and Do attack.
She'll be coming with me.
After a brief and humorous bickering, Ayane and Marie put their heads together to try to get Honoka back.
What are you going to do about this? Will you stop trying to push the blame on others? But it is your fault! If anything happens to Honoka... She's been captured. She can't answer you. Are you an idiot?
Marie then remembers Honoka's phone has a GPS signal and Ayane asks if she can track her.
Can you trace it?
I think so.
Unfortunately for them, Christy and Nico anticipated this very move and used it to their advantage to lure them into a trap. Making their way past the military personnel, Ayane and Marie easily get inside the lab of the headquarters, only to find a lone Nico confidently lying in wait, attempting to lock them inside.
We've been waiting for you, Ayane.
With quick thinking, Ayane jams one of the shutters long enough to buy Marie enough time to escape.
You find Honoka. Go!
Okay.
After defeating Nico, the Techromancer drops an informative bombshell on Ayane, confirming her suspicions about Honoka once and for all.
As expected, you too really are a daughter of Raido. Did you say you too? Good. You catch on quickly. Yes. The two of you are sisters.
Taking advantage of Ayane's confusion, Nico renders her unconscious with a lightning blast, but not before Ayane could deliver a message to her fellow ninjas.
Ayane and Honoka are both taken to another section of the lab where their blood is being transfused with the cybernetic corpse of Raido, which, if successful, will revive him from the dead. Needless to say, the experiment was a success. But the success would prove costly, as Raido proved to be even more unhinged than he's ever been, focused on destroying the Mugen Tenshin and nothing else, vanishing instantly from the lab. Moments later, Kasumi and Hayate would catch up to Ayane and Honoka's whereabouts, and Kasumi would exchange pleasantries with Nico, defeating her just as badly as Ayane did. But Nico had one more trump card up her sleeve, as she would gamble on Ayane to kill Kasumi herself, who had recently been corrupted by Raido's ki. Because of this, Kasumi had no choice but to knock out and defeat Ayane.
I may have left a little surprise with Miss Ayane. Take your time.
Ayane! Hayate?
Don't worry. They are only sleeping.
With Honoka safely rescued by Hayate, the four made for a safe exit from the headquarters, running into Bayman and a grief-stricken Marie, who was tearfully believed that Honoka was alive, albeit barely. The reunion would be short-lived as Ayane was awakened by Raido's ki, which seemed to resonate within her the closer he was. This was when Hayate knew Raido wasn't too far off, and the pressure was on to stop him now before things got worse.
Raido! We follow.
Kasumi, Ayane, and Hayate followed Raido all the way to the hidden garden near Kasumi's former home in the Miyabi, where they engage in a final showdown with Raido and defeat him once again, ending the events of Dead or Alive 6 from Ayane's perspective.
Now I know what you're thinking. What the hell does Fatal Frame have to do with Dead or Alive? To be honest, I was just as skeptical about it when I started off researching for this episode, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the most well-versed when it comes to the lore of Fatal Frame. I highly recommend the Four Snakes YouTube page for that deep dive. But the fact that Ayane herself was actually involved in the latest game story to date, Fatal Frame Made of Black Water, was just far too interesting to ignore.
For brevity's sake, the Fatal Frame series, or Project Zero in Japan, is Tecmo's answer to the survival horror genre, making its debut in late 2001 with the first game releasing on PlayStation 2 in Japan. Fatal Frame has its own unique recurring theme throughout the series. Visit a haunted area, and survive against a variety of apparitions with your trusty magic camera, or as the lore calls it so eloquently, the Camera Obscura. The Camera Obscura is an invention created by one Dr. Kunihiko Asui, which, according to him, is able to take pictures of impossible things. However, it is also capable of exorcising ghosts. Think of it as the vampire killer to Fatal Frame's Castlevania. Now that we have the most basic knowledge of the Fatal Frame series, Let's spin our way. Yeah, I just went there. Hashtag spin to win. To what's relevant for this episode's star of the show. After completing the main story of Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater, some bonus chapters featuring Ayane that take place outside of the main story are unlocked. In these bonus chapters, Ayane is a ninja for hire. As to who hired her, I don't know, so don't ask. Who was sent to investigate the disappearance of one Tsumugi Katashina, a young girl with suicidal tendencies who looks no older than 12 years old. Equipped with a magic purple bracelet, her investigation leads her to Mount Hikami, a common place where people go to end their lives. When she arrives there, the bracelet triggers a string of purple light, allowing Ayane to follow the proper trail that Tsumugi went to. But her luck would end there, as she encounters a ghost. Ayane attempts to fend it off with her signature Fuma Kodachi, but it was too late, as even more ghosts overwhelmed her from behind the walls, rendering her unconscious. When she came to, Ayane found herself in a room laid face forward with enchanted tattoos being inscribed on her back by a mysterious figure. These tattoos, or rather, the shadow sigil, would put her on the verge of death long enough to connect with the afterlife itself, and would prove useful in remaining undetected by the ghosts who attacked her before. As the mysterious figure finishes inscribing the shadow sigil on her back, Ayane begins to have a vision of her talking with Tsumugi near a cliff by a river at sunset.
Do you hate your sister?
Huh?
Do you hate yourself? Very well. This will make you stronger.
Well, holy shit. Turns out this Tsumugi kid's got a lot in common with Ayane. She was neglected while her older sister got the star treatment? Well, this has potential so far.
Knowing her weapons will not help her this time, Ayane is given the Spirit Stone flashlight by the mysterious figure, as opposed to the more iconic Camera Obscura to help pulverize the pesky poltergeist when she has to. Afterward, she continues to head for the summit of Mount Hikami and finds the Shrine of the Ephemeral. Once there, she eventually finds an entranced Tsumugi about to be sucked in by the Blackwater, and Ayane saves her just in the nick of time.
We made it.
But the Denzians of the Netherworld weren't going to give Tsumugi without a fight. With no other option, Ayane and Tsumugi had to escape the shrine as quickly as possible with even more aggressive ghosts in tow.
You're suffering because of your sister. understands how you feel. I promise. She's your family. It might not seem like it now, but don't worry. She cares for you very deeply. That's what families are. People who care for one another. It's okay. You'll get stronger.
I'll get strong.
With the two safely escaping the haunted mountain, Ayane reassures Tsumugi that, in spite of how differently they appear to be treated, her older sister cares for her very much, and in turn, Tsumugi promised Ayane that she'll be stronger, proving the events of Fatal Frame 5 Maiden of Blackwater from Ayane's perspective.
So now we gotta ask ourselves, where the hell does this fit in the timeline? Does it even fit at all? Is it even canon? If the Four Snakes research is correct, and I'm sure it is, the events of Fatal Frame 5 take place in 2006, roughly a year after Dead or Alive 4 was released. If we were to somehow fit Fatal Frame in the same universe as Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden, it would be easy to snug this event somewhere in the 2-year gap between Dead or Alive 4 and 5, since the events of Dead or Alive would have started no earlier than 2005. But reality is not so kind, as that presents other inconsistencies. The first one being the events of Dead or Alive 2 in the Itagaki era, and the inaccuracy of modern technology in the retcon post-Itagaki era. In the original story of Dead or Alive 2, it's explicitly stated that famed Douglas was assassinated at the end of the 20th century, which, if we're being generous, at least happened between 1999 and 2000, 6 years earlier than the events of Fatal Frame 5. At this time, Ayane would be 22 years old at best, and yet her in-game model looks exactly the same as her 18-year-old self in Dead or Alive 5. As far as modern technology goes in the post-Itagaki era, the elephant in the room is Dead or Alive 6, which picked up right where Dead or Alive 5 left off. Even if we were to assume the retcon story takes place in 2005, I'm quite certain we didn't have cell phones that advanced in 2007. But to play devil's advocate, let's say that didn't matter. You still have to come to terms that Ayane's chapters have little to no impact on the main story, and that her inclusion was shoehorned midway into development to draw bigger audiences. And while it certainly helps sell the game, the fact still remains that even with both the original and retcon story taken into account, the Fatal Frame series is still chronologically incompatible with the Dead or Alive series. But damn if Ayane's side story in Fatal Frame 5 wasn't interesting enough to be canon. A damn shame.
Finally, we reached the last stretch of this episode, and there's a lot to process here. We have a character who suffered a terrible childhood for simply being a bastard child, who was shunned by almost everyone in the village, betrayed by both her birth father and her surrogate father, so basically all of her fathers, and all the while being trained to suppress her emotions to become the perfect killing machine, or as close to one as one can get. And this is before she even reaches the age of 14. But 3 key characters would prove a significant role in finding her humanity in spite of how she was raised. Hayate, her mother, and Elliot. Oh, we cannot forget Elliot. And over the years, her hatred for her sister Kasumi would wane gradually, despite her technically breaking the shinobi code. Finally, her reunion with the sister she never knew opens up a wealth of possibilities for their future.
Yeah, but there's still some unanswered questions connected to her. Like, what was Genru's connection to the Tengu? Why did he have a deal to release into the human world in the first place? What was in it for Donovan, if he did? And when Ayane was under the Tengu spell, right? Like, why did she specifically, call herself the Neo Tengu of Miyama?
Gil, Force, I made it no surprise to anyone in episode 0 last year about how much I disliked that scene. And even now, I stand by it. This was a waste of potential. So many unanswered questions could have been addressed right there to even greater effect. This scene This crucial scene was the perfect setup to not only answer all these questions, but reintroduce supernatural elements, and even better, introduce an entire parallel world back into the main story of Dead or Alive after 4 straight sequels of predominantly scientific elements succeeding Dead or Alive 2. And what did it have to show for it? A comedic but petty exposed train with lesbian undertones? Really? Maybe in a few or several years when Team Ninja gets a second wind of ideas for the next Dead or Alive fighting game, if there ever is one, they might consider exploring this a bit more. But for now, what's done is done. We can only speculate and wonder what could have been. Oops, I mean, we can only speculate and wonder what could have.
Okay then.
It was an editing mistake.
You seem pretty happy with that editing mistake.
Better to be happy than fed up with my mistakes.
Yeah, it's time to give up the mic, Oz. Come on, give it in.
No, the hell it ain't. I'm waist deep in the plot.
He's doing it again.
Doing what again?
Waist deep? Really, Oz? Like, come on now.
Whatever the future holds, as long as there's a decent beauty shop, lots of wide open space, and Kurapika lookalikes that need a good slap in the face, always count on Ayane to spin her way into action.
まったくどこ見て戦ってるのかしら。